Su Yang stood inside the training ground until the sun had set without receiving a single customer, yet he refused to leave and continued to stand there like a stone statue. Su Yang stood inside the training ground until the sun had set without receiving a single customer, yet he refused to leave and continued to stand there like a stone statue. The disciples there were surprised to see such a patient character, and those who weren't aware of his identity were charmed by his noble presence. It felt as though they were being protected by a guardian spirit. Time passed quickly, and soon the night sky appeared, yet there still hasn't been a single customer that approached him. However, despite getting 0 customers after an entire day, Su Yang didn't panic, nor was he worried. Instead, he kept his confidence and remained his calm face. From morning to night, such patience caused many to secretly admire him, wishing that they could have the same thing when it came to training themselves. After some time, Su Yang finally moved. He tilted his head and looked at the night sky, but all he saw inside his head was an image of Elder Land's round buttocks. No, one day at most. Su Yang mumbled. He then began rolling up the sign and prepared to go back home for the day. After sending Chi Yue back to her living quarters, Elder Land directly went back to her own. Inside, she laid on her bed with her back facing the ceiling. Since she cannot sit because of the abnormal pain in her buttocks, her cultivation came to a halt since a few days ago. This really sucks, she sighed underneath her pillow. The pain had started last week without any notice, and has been increasing at a fast rate since then. Unable to sit without crying, she could only stand or lay on the bed. At this rate, I wouldn't be able to walk without bearing any pain. I need to get this treated as soon as possible. Suddenly, the image of Su Yang and his handsome face appeared in her head, and that made her feel irritated. Why did that rude brat come into mind? She wanted to ignore him, but the fact that Chi Yu's leg had been treated by him wouldn't change, no matter what. How did he do it? I wasn't even able to see the problem with my 10 years of experience, yet he healed her in a single night, and seemingly flawlessly, too. That little brat Chi Yue. Why won't she tell me anything? Am I not trustworthy in her eyes? The more she thought about the situation between Su Yang and Chi Yue, the angrier she got. Suddenly, in the midst of her thoughts, an excruciating sharp pain that caused her to cry out loud attacked her buttocks. The pain was akin to having a sharp sword stab her in the rear over and over again, nearly causing her to lose consciousness. In her 40 years of life, she has never experienced anything near as painful as currently. Furthermore, the pain did not cease, and only continued to grow stronger. And within minutes, she lost consciousness, her body soaked in sweat. When she woke up, it was already morning, and her robes were still wet. The bed sheets were also soaking wet, but it wasn't her sweating that had soaked them, but something else entirely different. The thought of her wetting the bed as a 40-year-old grown woman caused her head to explode in redness. Luckily, she lived alone by herself. If someone had seen her wet the bed at her age, then she would surely lose all faith and her desire to live. It was at this point, after she had wet the bed, that she realized the help she needed. If this continued, then who knows what might happen tomorrow, let alone a week from now. Just thinking about it caused her to tremble violently. But where do I get help? Who can help me? Elder Lan pondered, but to no avail. She could be considered one of the best doctor within the sect, yet she couldn't even heal herself. Suddenly, an image of Chi Yue smiling appeared in her head, and standing casually beside her was a handsome young man with a calm expression, one that made others feel confident when in his presence. Su Yang. Elder Lan quickly cleaned herself before rushing towards the training ground. When she arrived, however, neither Su Yang or his poorly made sign was anywhere to be seen. She then went to Chi Yu's living quarters. Chi Yue, wake up. Elder Lan directly opened the door to Chi Yu's living quarters with a spare key that had been given to her by Chi Yue for emergencies. Sister Lan. Chi Yue rubbed her eyes tiredly, puzzled as to why Elder Lan would be there. Su Yang, where does he live? I need to see him right this moment. Senior apprentice brother Su. Chi Yue has never seen her sister Lan so panicked before, so she also began panicking. What did senior apprentice brother Su do? Is he in trouble? No, I need to see whether or not he can treat my injury. Elder Lan forcefully squeezed the reason she needed to see him out of her mouth through her embarrassment. Chi Yue looked at her dumbfoundedly for a moment, and her eyes suddenly began sparkling. Sister Lan requires senior apprentice brother sus treatment. Right, I'll bring you to his living quarters right away, Chi Yue said in a happy-sounding voice as she jumped off the bed. Elder Lan nodded, yet there was still a shred of doubt in her heart. Could a mere outer court disciple like Su Yang really treat her injury? She was still hesitant, but the urgency in her heart overwhelmed her uncertainty. She wouldn't be able to endure pain she felt last night, or waking up to herself wetting the bed for a second time. After all, Elder Lan banged on the doors to Su Yang's living quarters, but the person who came out to greet them a moment later was Tang Hu, Su Yang's roommate. Elder Lan. He looked more terrified than surprised to see a sect elder banging at his door. Did he do something that had managed to offend this elder? This disciple greets. Bring disciple Su Yang out here, Elder Lan interrupted. Su Yang. He left some time ago. What? Where did he go? Elder Lan frowned. Don't tell me he went to the training ground while I went to get Chi Yue, she thought. He didn't tell me where he'd go. Sis, Elder Lan, perhaps senior apprentice brother Su went to the training ground like usual. You, tell Su Yang, when he comes back, that I am looking for him, with urgent matters that cannot be delayed. Elder Lan then stormed off to the training grounds again, leaving Tang Hu dumbfounded and wondering what on earth Su Yang did to offend a respected sect elder such as Elder Lan. Elder Lan and Chi Yue went straight to the training grounds in hopes to see a handsome young man standing beside his poor-looking sign, but alas, he was nowhere to be seen. This disciple greets Elder Lan. Have any of you seen a disciple named Su Yang? The one who usually stands there like an idiot? Elder Lan asked the disciples training there, but all of them shook their heads. Where is that kid? Chi Yue, go ask around and see if anyone has seen Su Yang. If you cannot find him within the hour, come back here and meet with me. If you find him, then bring him here. If I do not come back after an hour, then I should have already found him. Okay. Elder Lan then looked at the disciples there and said, if any of you see disciple Su Yang, tell him that Elder Lan is looking for him. If you can find him for me, then I will award you with 100 premium points. 100 premium points. That's as much as a high-risk mission would award. The disciples there became excited from the mission given to them by Elder Lan. Someone as handsome as Su Yang must be an easy sighting, right? And the fact that almost all outer court disciple knows his face only makes this mission easier. The disciples scrambled out of the training grounds as though there was an ongoing fire. And for the first time since the sect's opening, the training ground looked deserted. Somewhere in the outer court, Su Yang was casually flipping through pages for a book. Sitting beside him are books and scrolls that piled all the way above his head. He was in the library, where hundreds of records and even cultivation techniques were gathered. This library, the Profound Library, is a place that rents out its resources to its disciples and elders alike. Whether it'd be an ancient record about myths and legends or a scroll containing a profound cultivation technique, they have it all. Su Yang was trying to learn more about this world that he was mysteriously thrown into. However, in this mortal world, there was little to no information on the places he knew. The moon god's palace, the heavenly temple, even the land of gods, that everybody and their mother in his previous life knew are unknown in this world, or remain as mere legends and myths. Am I really in the same world? Or was I reincarnated into a foreign world, one that I have no knowledge of? Su Yang placed the book down and sighed, his gaze filled with doubt. But there are also many things here that I am familiar with, such as the pure young flower. Even the cultivation stages here are the same. In his previous life, Su Yang traveled not just his own world, but all four worlds that shared the same universe. If he was thrown into any of these four worlds, he should know right away. Yet he doesn't have the slightest clue as to where he is currently. This is clearly the mortal world. But what is this eastern continent? How long has it been since I left the Eternal Retribution Cliff? Countless questions that have no answers appeared in his mind. After glancing through a few more scrolls, Su Yang came to a conclusion. If he does not leave this sect and learn more about this world, then he will surely never see those he loves again. However, it was still early for him to leave, mainly because he is currently too weak. With his cultivation base, he can forget about surviving the wilderness, let alone find his lovers that are scattered across the starry sky. At his current stage, any expert within the cultivation world could easily crush him with a single finger, so he could only stay holed up in this sect until he has a sufficient cultivation base that would allow him to travel without too much danger. Su Yang took a deep breath, and he looked at the beauties that walked in and out of the library. The moment I obtain the pure young flower, that is when I will truly begin cultivating. His gaze flickered with a profound light. Su Yang stayed in the corner of the library until the sunset arrived, and he finally decided to leave. After tidying up the place, Su Yang left the library and went back to his living quarters, where a mature woman stood in front of his door with an irritated expression on her face. The moment the mature woman saw Su Yang, her eyes widened. Su Yang, where have you been all day? Do you have any idea how long I have been waiting here for you? A mere disciple like you dare to make a sect elder like me wait all day in front of your door. Do you have any idea how much face I have lost today because of you? Su Yang smiled at the sight of Elder Lan fuming with anger, something he found somewhat cute and charming. Greetings, Elder Lan. What business does a respectful sect elder such as yourself have with me, a mere outer court disciple? He greeted her with a bow. HMPH. Talking outside would be inappropriate. Let us talk inside. Very well. Su Yang approached the door calmly, keeping a smile on his face.